Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and a happy Wednesday on a Thursday to our Bayou Blitz family. We appreciate all those of you. We always appreciate you tuning in, but we especially appreciate it tonight. We do apologize for the postponement of the show yesterday. But we wanted our Bayou Blitz friends in the Bayou to be able to tune into us, and hopefully everybody that was in the path of Hurricane Francine, is safe and as dry as possible. And hopefully you're tuning in to your Bayou Blitz podcast this evening with a big old smile on your face. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me is my partner, my friend, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy week 2.
Happy week 2. Happy Wednesday on a Thursday. Hope everybody out there that was, like Bob said, kind of in the path is safe. Hopefully not too many of you guys were affected by the storm, whether that be the 8 inches of rain that you guys got down there, whether it be the power. I mean, all the different things that can go wrong. So if you're hanging out with us tonight, we certainly appreciate it. We see Rose City and Sunny are already in here. So hello, guys. Thanks for joining us. Bob, week 1 was a success, not only for us and the show, but the football team themselves. And we had an entire post game to talk about that. I don't want to spend too much time on it. If you haven't listened to our post game thoughts, you can find that wherever you get your pods. And that's just the Bayou Blitz podcast. Just search it up in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, go back on YouTube here in the archives, whatever you got to do. But Bob, I thought it would be fun to sit here and just kind of, after having a couple days to sit on it, marinate on it, maybe rewatch the film a little bit as well. What are your closing thoughts on week 1? Give me a positive, a negative, and I don't want to say a neutral, but maybe like a we'll see thought, like something that you still have to sit on and marinate a little bit longer.
I'll tell you the positive for me. There's so many positives to take away, but I love the game plan that the coaches came in with. Obviously Clint Kubiak and the offensive staff did a fantastic job game planning. I don't think enough credit has been given to Dennis Allen, Joe Woods, and that defensive game plan. Just so aggressive, so creative. They did what you're supposed to do against inferior teams. You got them on the ropes early, and you didn't let them breathe. You didn't let them regroup. You didn't let them get an ounce of momentum. The same could be said, obviously, for the offensive side as well. Special teams. We gave accolades to Blake Groupie, for his field goals. But I think him and Darren Reese, had a fantastic game plan on kickoffs as well. Blake, it was obvious that the Saints were going to challenge the Carolina return man and force them to return kickoffs, not by pooching them down at the 10, or booting them through the end zone, which we know Blake can, but perfect placement right down along the goal line, and then just letting your athletic coverage units take over. So many positives to take away, but that was my biggest one. The negatives, I can't think of too many other than injuries. There were some penalties you got to get cleaned up, and some different things. But the thing that popped out to me the most are injuries, and we'll talk about this a little bit from now, in more specifics. But Marshawn Lattimore leaving the game, Willie Gay leaving the game, Lucas Patrick leaving the game. Those are all starters. Talise Fuaga finished the game against Carolina, but has popped up, rather significantly on the injury report this week. So you don't want to be bombarded with injuries this early in the year. It doesn't appear as if any of them, knock on wood, are serious, but it could put any or all of those players that I just mentioned in jeopardy, for week 2. As far as the we'll see. I don't want to hear the garbage about the lack of quality opponent that Carolina was, or anything like that. It's an NFL team. You still put 47 points up on them, and you still beat them by 37 points. That's pretty significant. But the wait and see for me will be the performance of the offensive line, the offense in general, but specifically the offensive line. I kept saying all offseason that this was my biggest worry on the team until it proves that it isn't. And 1 week, regardless of what the outcome was, whether it was good, bad, or ugly, a performance after 1 week, I'm not ready to judge just yet. I need to see it going forward, especially from Trevor Penning, Fuaga, and those offensive tackles. And they're going to get a big test this week, as we're going to delve into in a moment, with the Dallas Cowboys edge rushers. So, yeah, my wait and see will be the offensive line.
I think for me, the biggest positive was when you dive into like the next gen stats and you see that the Saints were first in the league in pre-snap motion. I think that's my biggest positive, is just you can hear about change all you want. You can hope for change all you want, especially when you bring in a new offensive staff. But to physically see that change was a big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Negatives. Like you said, there's not a whole lot of negatives in this game. We kind of talked about it in the post game a little bit, was that the offensive line played probably a lot better than most people thought they would. And yeah, we have some injuries, and we'll get into that. But honestly, like offensively, not a whole lot of negatives. Defensively, not a whole lot of negatives. If you want to be really nitpicky, it would have been nice to see a defensive end get a sack and not, a corner get 3 sacks, but that's just being nitpicky. They disrupted Bryce Young. They didn't give up a whole lot in, rushing. I don't really have a true negative. I'm not saying it was a flawless game. I'm sure if we wanted to be nitpicky, we could find things, but it was pretty close to flawless for the New Orleans Saints. Even going to special teams. I mean, like, I don't think people are talking enough about the fact that like Blake Groupie was 4-4. Like he had a stellar game. He now is second in New Orleans Saints history for points accounted for in a single game with that performance. And Alvin Kamara is the only one who's higher, and that's Christmas Day, Kamara's Christmas Day performance. So I think that has a lot to be said. So kind of a shout out, kickers are people too. And then the we'll see kind of goes back to the positive, which is weird, but we'll see if it's sustainable. Right? Like we can get really hyped, we can get really happy about what we saw in week 1, but is it going to be a flash in the pan, or is it going to be something that the Saints are going to be able to continue to show throughout the season?
Right.
So those are kind of our closing thoughts on week 1 as we dive into week 2. Bob, before we get into that, you teased it last week. We have some exciting news for the Bayou Blitz podcast, and knock on wood, we should have even more exciting news to come. But for the definites, for the things that we can 100% tell you, I leave it to the very well-spoken Bob Rose.
I don't know who this well-spoken person is, but I'll do my best to fill in.
Well-spoken, yeah. Will-spoken. Does Will need to come in and do it?
Maybe.
Well, close enough.
But listen, we are proud to announce that the Bayou Blitz will be a part of promoting the 11th annual Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise, with the proceeds benefiting the American Cancer Society. This is going to be a terrific event with an ultimate fan experience and heavy involvement from former Saints greats like Delvin Breaux, Michael Lewis, Courtney Roby, Tyrone Hughes, Lance Moore, and more. And we'll be having these players and more to help promote the event over the next several weeks. Delvin was supposed to join us this week, but unfortunately he was in the was in the path of Hurricane Francine. So out of a precaution, we're going to bring back Delvin Breaux and those other players that I mentioned over the next several weeks. Yeah, this cruise is booked through Seven Seas Travel Agency, and the cruise itself is going to be from March 27th to 31st. For booking and promotional info, you can individually contact Shireen DeWalt through the Go Black and Gold charity celebrity fan cruise Facebook page, where she'll have her phone number, and email attached to it, or you can just tune in to Brendan and I with the Bayou Blitz every week, where as we get closer to the end of the season, I've been informed, we're also going to be part of a promotional giveaway that's going to involve 2 tickets to this cruise. I'm very excited, and you can't beat the cause either.
No, money going to a good cause. You could win a cruise and hang out with some of your favorite Saints of all time. It's a win-win for everybody. And this is an event that I know a lot of guys that we have had on the show before, guys that we would consider friends, have been a part of over the last so many years, maybe not all 10 years and now 11th year, but the last handful of years, especially when it comes to Delvin and Tyrone Hughes. So really good cause, really excited to be a part of it, really excited to share some of this stuff with you and have some of these guys come on, tell you guys about the causes, talk to them about their football careers and their time in New Orleans. So we're stoked for this.
Yeah.
And like we said, we have hopefully some other news coming, but definitely the biggest news of the day right there. So with that, we'll jump right into week 2. Bob, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And if you look at your calendars or your seasonal clocks, if you will, we are in the delusional Dallas Cowboy fans part of the season. Now, they had an impressive performance in Cleveland, beating the Cleveland Browns. Talking about the Cleveland Browns and what's going on up there with their quarterback situation's a different story for a different day. But I digress. The Cowboys, a lot of hope for them. They just paid Dak Prescott a lot of money. Ezekiel Elliott comes back to Dallas, scores in his first game back. Not the same Ezekiel Elliott, but we went through it ourselves not that long ago, bringing back a familiar face at running back and just being really stoked to have a guy like that back. So they're riding some momentum. There's obviously a lot of pressure on the Cowboys, as there always is, but I definitely feel more so this season. And some of it's the Dak extension, and some of it even stems from before the Dak extension of what is this team? They've kind of been stuck for definitely the last 3 or 4 years in being a team that is like good enough to make the playoffs, but not good enough to be a true contender. And then you could really date that back my entire life. The Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl in my lifetime. You could really date it back the last almost 30 years and just be like,
I hate when you do that.
You love it. You absolutely love it. Wait, hold on. Wait a minute. I'll make it worse. The Cowboys have won one Super Bowl in Lauren's lifetime?
Yes.
So there, I made it even more relatable for you, Bob. Don't you love when I do that? So with all that said, I mean, the Cowboys have been in a rut for a long time, and it's all kind of getting to I don't want to call it a boiling point, but there is a lot of pointing fingers and like, who's to blame here? And obviously a lot of it goes to Jerry Jones and the ownership and how much of a hand he's played in everything. But there's a lot of pressure. And this is a game against New Orleans that maybe Cowboys fans at the beginning of the season were saying, well, this is a good game to kind of see where we are, but we should beat New Orleans. After week 1, Dallas fans have to be thinking a little different, Bob.
I think they might be. Don't get me wrong. I think that the Cowboys win in week 1, 33-17 in Cleveland. I basically think that that's just as impressive as what the Saints did to Carolina. The score wasn't quite as lopsided, but there was a point in the game, and I caught most of it. There was a point in the game where it was just as lopsided, and at least on paper, the Cleveland Browns appear to be heads and shoulders a better team than what the Carolina Panthers are. Some people even had Cleveland challenging for the NFC North Division title. They were a playoff team last year. They have one of the better defenses in the National Football League. And the Cowboys went on the road and really dismantled them. And did it without a lot of fireworks. Did it without a heap of turnovers, forcing a heap of turnovers. They just played better football. And they scored or set up scores just like the Saints did on offense, on defense, on special teams. And, like you said, September through, we'll say Thanksgiving or at least early December, that's prime season for Cowboys fans. Who every single year it seems, we're unbeatable. This is a Super Bowl team. The Super Bowl drought is going to be broken, and until you get into meaningful games in December and January. And the last 3 years, this Cowboys team has been 12-5. Last year was NFC East champions. And every single year they lay an egg in the playoffs. And I think we said it. It feels like we say this annually on our show, Brendan. When we do our own weekly recap, whether or not the Saints are in the playoffs. With Dallas, it's not when the games really count. When the spotlight gets hot. Let me rephrase: when the spotlight gets hot, something seems to be missing with this Cowboys organization. Lack of intestinal fortitude, or whatever body part you want to use. It seems like the Cowboys do nothing but shoot themselves in the foot, and wilt like a hothouse flower underneath of the primetime lights.
I think going into this week for Dallas as well is you're battling a team who has a new offensive identity. This is not a super strong Cowboys defense outside of the edge rushers. I think Diggs is an interesting one because you had the 1 year where he led the NFL in interceptions, right? And that's great. But when you look at the advanced stats, it's he's also one of the most targeted corners in the league. So statistically speaking, if you're targeted that much, you're going to have opportunities to make plays on the ball. He took advantage of them. Is he a top 10 corner in the league? No. Is he an above average corner in the league? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not a guy we're not talking about a guy that's like Revis Island and it's really going to take away your best receiver. I think that's going to be an interesting point for Dallas. And then offensively, CeeDee Lamb, you get some of that worked out. That was weird this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I know this, and you guys watching know this as well. Even though it gets resolved by the ink drying on paper, doesn't mean everything that happened to get to that point gets necessarily resolved. And sometimes the old saying of time is the greatest healer is extremely true. Because in the back of CeeDee Lamb's mind, he's probably thinking, did they really want me?
Mm-hmm.
Or did they really want to pay me? And that can go one of two ways. That can be used as motivation on the field, and sometimes you just get in your own head. But
well, and you know what? And this is relevant to this game coming up. There were a lot of rumors that CeeDee Lamb, when he finally did come in after the agreement was reached, that he was out of shape. And some critics even pointed to how out of shape he looked. Against a very good Cleveland secondary in Week 1. I don't know how much of that is true. I don't follow, obviously, the Cowboys like I follow the Saints. But it's a very interesting storyline heading into Week 2, where CeeDee Lamb, our old friend Brandon Cooks, face another very talented secondary in the New Orleans Saints.
Absolutely. And that segues into Brandon Cooks, who his time in New England, his time in Houston, now his time in Dallas has proven to be a good offensive weapon that you still don't know how he fits in an offense. Is he your 1B? Is he your number 2? Is he a guy you want to line up in the slot? That's always been the question with Brandon. He has receiver 1 talent. And early in his career, he had receiver 1 type of breakaway speed. But now as he's gotten older and as he's played alongside some other very talented guys, there has been a little bit more gray area. And like, well, what is he? Where does he fit best? Coming back to New Orleans, for any player, especially a player that was drafted in the first round by a franchise, you get to go back and you get to play them, whether it's at your home or in the home of the team that drafted you. You know that that's a big deal. I kind of have my eyes on Cooks in this game and just kind of see what the response is for him. But with all that said, you have question marks really outside of CeeDee Lamb, and even with CeeDee Lamb, being a little out of shape. And then at running back, I don't think what the Cowboys did this summer made any sense at running back. I think they took a massive step backwards. That's the offense. The defense we talked about, good, not great. Overrated may be the best word.
Dropping the O word. I love it.
Overrated. Statistically speaking, one of the best defenses in football. But when you break the film down, there's a lot of big star potential at certain positions that get a lot of attention that to a national media audience covers the holes of other spots. Like there are some glaring holes on that defense, but the attention isn't put on that when you have a guy like Micah Parsons, who could very well be the defensive player of the year every year that he plays, right? That's how I view this defense. That's going to be the biggest thing for New Orleans. But before we get into the defense, let's go back to the offense a little bit. Bob, I brought up Brandon Cooks. I brought up the running back situation not making a lot of sense. They bring back Ezekiel Elliott. They bring in Dalvin Cook. Let's start there. This is a Saints defense that was not challenged against the run against Carolina because they were up 20 points in the first however many minutes of the ball game. This is not the same Ezekiel Elliott. And as big of a fan as I am of Dalvin Cook and what he was in Minnesota, the signs of what Dalvin Cook was are way back there. Just throw on the tape last year when he was in New York with the Jets. Not the same Dalvin Cook either. The Cowboys are hoping to get a glimpse or just a little bit of spark out of what those two guys were in their primes. They're past it. What's scary about that for the Saints? And how does that almost play into the Saints' hands as well?
Well, when you're playing a Dallas Cowboys, you obviously have to focus on the Cowboys' passing attack. A very prolific passing attack. You can call them paper champions if you want to. Go back to what I said about wilting under the primetime lights. But regardless about how you feel about them, you have to acknowledge that Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, that passing game in general, they have to be accounted for first and foremost. So, and I only say that I lead with that for this reason. The Saints, as we know, have a very good defense in general and a very good, very good coverage defense in particular. But it's easy to go into this game go up against this Cowboys team and say, oh, we're going to do this to stop the pass. We're going to do that to contain Dak Prescott. We're going to do this to contain CeeDee Lamb. And you forget about the running game. The Cowboys have a talented enough passing attack where they don't have to run for 140 and 150 yards, to really put your defense in a hole. If Dallas just establishes the threat of a run, whether it's by Zeke Elliott, Dalvin Cook, Rico Dowdle, or a combination of the three, which I think is what what their ultimate plan is. If they can run the ball just effective enough, that gives that slows the pass rush on Dak Prescott by maybe half a second. Half a second is an eternity. Especially when you're throwing to a speedster like Brandon Cooks, or a big physical guy like CD Lamb, or even an underrated guy that we both like in Jalen Tolbert. So while this is not going to be a Saints defensive game plan where they're going to stack extra players in the box. In fact, just the opposite. I would not be surprised to see them come out with a base 2 linebacker set with an extra defensive back in the game. And I wrote about this on a piece I did this afternoon for the Saints News Network. Stopping the Cowboys run, and other way, not just stopping the Cowboys running game, but completely eliminating it, putting the onus of the game completely on Dak Prescott, so that way you can turn your pass rushers loose, and send them up the field. That's going to be really important. And the Cowboys, as we've seen the last couple of years, if they've fallen behind early, or if their running game is stopped early, they tend to give up on it. And so that's going to be the challenge for the Saints, to make the Cowboys think we're not going to be able to run the ball against New Orleans. Let's just scrap this part of the game plan. And Dak, you throw the ball 40, 45, 50 times. That against another defense, might work. But if they do that against the Saints, I like the Saints coverage units. We think they're improved enough. New Orleans is in the pass rush, to really make a difference in this game, and to keep the Cowboys under wraps. But you have to prevent them from being balanced by not allowing the senior citizen running backs, to get any traction early in the game.
Whew. That senior citizen running back. You're going to love me today, Bob. How much older are you than them?
That's different. There's our football years. I just got volleyball years on me.
Yeah, okay. Fair. So be it, Bob. You're absolutely right, though. You can go back through the years, when it came to Dallas and their time with Dak Prescott, which almost seems like an eternity in some cases. But there has been a lot of times where, even with Ezekiel Elliott and the time without Ezekiel Elliott, where the run wasn't there, and you look at the stats and you go, damn, like Dak threw the ball 50 times today. And I've said it on this podcast before. I've said it in post-game shows. I've probably even written about it. I've always thought Dak Prescott got a lot of unnecessary heat and a lot of unnecessary hate, because I really do think Dak Prescott is a good NFL quarterback. But just like any player, not just the quarterback position, for a player to be successful, they have to be put in positions to be successful by their coaching staff. And Dak Prescott is going to be really successful when you can run the ball effectively, when he can work off of play action, and when he's throwing somewhere between 28 to 35 passes a game. I think that's where you get your best Dak Prescott. And 35 being on the high side if Dak's arm's got to win you a game, and he's proven he can do that. Throwing the ball 45, 50 times a game is not where you want to be if you're the Cowboys. I think Cowboys fans would even agree with me on that. So I think that is going to be the big thing. The Saints defense is going to pose some different challenges than what Cleveland did a week ago. I think in our conversations very early and even in the offseason, on paper, the Saints have one of the better secondaries in football, if not one of the best secondaries in football. Revamped defensive line for the New Orleans Saints. A lot of new faces, a lot of similar faces. It's a good blend. And then you have Demario Davis, one of the better, if not the best and most intelligent linebacker in football, with Pete Warner and then Willie Gay, who we've just sung the praises of. That's going to create some issues. I think that the linebackers are really going to be able to plug the holes, especially in the A and the B gaps, those places where Ezekiel Elliott loves to run. The issue is going to be on those C gaps off tackle with those zone blocking schemes of the Cowboys, because that's where Dalvin Cook has thrived throughout his career. And I'm sure Dalvin Cook has a lot to prove to people this year, that he still has some gas in the tank. If you can keep everything between the tackles and allow those linebackers to plug holes, I think the Saints will be successful, because that's going to take away what I think is the best part of Dak Prescott's game, like I mentioned before, running off of play action. So, with all of that said, do you think, or do you see this Cowboys offense putting up as many points as they did a week ago? And you talked about the running game being so important for them. How much damage do you think CD and Brandon can do to the Saints defense if they're going to be that heavily relied on?
Boy, I'm hoping Marshawn Lattimore is healthy for this game, because this is exactly the type of matchup that Marshawn Lattimore has always gotten geeked up for. A one-on-one matchup with a quote-unquote elite receiver. And while I don't personally believe that CeeDee Lamb is elite, most do, and he's certainly a very good receiver and a viable threat. And CD's not a speed guy either. He's an athletic guy, but he's not a speed guy. He's a physical guy, a la Mike Evans, or in other words, the type of player that fits perfectly into Marshawn Lattimore's wheelhouse. So if Marshawn can play, I look for 23 to be shadowing 88 as often as possible. Even if Lattimore doesn't play, though, I still like this Saints secondary. We know what Paulson Adebo can do. I don't even care anymore that the national media ignores it, because they're a bunch of idiots anyway. Paulson Adebo has proven that he himself is a top tier cornerback. I put him just shy of elite, but he's definitely in the top tier. Alontae Taylor, you and I are both big fans of. Kool-Aid McKinstry, we're excited to see what he could do. Rico Payton was a preseason sensation. So if Lattimore is limited or cannot play at all, I still think the Saints will do all right. But no matter how good your coverage is, especially with the rules in today's NFL, you have to be able to get pressure on the quarterback and at least force them into rushed throws, because your secondary is just physically incapable of covering receivers for a solid 4 or 5 seconds without at least drawing a flag. Whether it's a legitimate one or not, that's a different story for a different time. So the key to being I do expect the Saints to be aggressive against CeeDee Lamb, against Brandon Cooks, who's a little bit more slightly built. Get physical with them at the line of scrimmage. Match Lamb and Tolbert's physicality. And as far as Prescott, we all know, regardless of how you feel about him as a player, even if you like him, you have to acknowledge that if you pressure him, he's gonna throw a couple to your team. So the pressure up front is what's going to be the key to the matchup in the secondary. That meant the one-on-one matchups in the secondary, they're primetime worthy, they're pay-per-view worthy. But for the Saints to ultimately come out on top of that matchup, you need to get your pressure up front. Your pressure has to nullify Dak Prescott's decision making.
You brought up Lattimore, so let's talk about the injury reports. Obviously, Lattimore is a big one, but there's a big one on the other side of the ball as well, and we've kind of alluded to it very early on in the show, and that's rookie first round pick and Tuis Fuaga, who sustained a little bit of an injury, was limited yesterday, but then does not practice today. We have talked about the issues the Saints have had at offensive line when there's a lot of question marks, particularly at the tackle position. Not that long ago, I just was on here saying that Micah Parsons, anytime that he plays a full healthy season, at least by the looks of it, throughout the rest of his career, he's going to be in that conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. He's that talented. How concerned are you that you have Trevor Penning on one side, who did have a good week one?
Yes, he did.
A good week one. Even going back and watching the film, I stand by. He had a good. I'm not going to say great. I'm not going to say it's otherworldly. I'm not going to say he's turning a corner. It's 1 week, but he had a good week one. A lot better than a lot of us anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a real test against a guy like Parsons. But then on the other side, if you want to move Parsons around, well, you may as well have Trevor Penning on one side, who's an unproven third-year guy, versus Lord knows who at left tackle if Fuaga can't go.
How concerned? Even with Fuaga, as soon as the schedule came out, I went like that because I'm like, oh my God. Early in the year, you have questions at the offensive line. You have an Eagles defense that swarms quarterbacks. You have Micah Parsons. You have Chris Jones. And you have the pass rushers in Tampa Bay all early on your schedule before your offensive line really gets a chance to even play with each other, and develop cohesion. So it was already a concern to me. Now if Fuaga can't play, it's a gigantic concern. First of all, I know, that Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, a very underrated pass rusher in his own right, they are listed as edge rushers on the opposite sides of each other. But look at the Dallas Cowboys game. They moved Micah Parsons around a lot. And against Cleveland, Micah played over the right tackle a lot. Well, that's Trevor Penning. And as we all know, Trevor Penning's weaknesses are speed and inside counter moves. Two things that nobody except for maybe TJ Watt does better than Micah Parsons. So again, that matchup was concerning enough. Now if Fuaga is severely limited or doesn't play at all, you can pretty much put Micah Parsons and DeMarcus anywhere on the offensive formation on the edge, and that the Saints are at a severe disadvantage. Whether you double them up on one edge, whether you line them up opposite of each other. Yes, you have to account for Micah Parsons, but you cannot. You ignore Lawrence, at the risk and long-term health and safety of your quarterback and everybody in your backfield. So I'm highly concerned about this matchup.
We saw the Saints use, I'm chuckling a little bit because I'll say two running backs and Taysom Hill, whatever Taysom Hill is, in the backfield. How much do you think that Jamal Williams, Taysom Hill especially, will have to play a role, especially if Fuaga doesn't play, in running the ball to try to slow down the pass rush of Parsons and Lawrence, who both are very good against the run as well?
They'll play a big role, as will obviously Alvin Kamara, as he always does. Because we know, and again, this is whether or not Fuaga plays. We know that Clint Kubiak wants to establish the run, wants to establish balance. We know that if you have Derek Carr at quarterback, you need to establish the run and establish balance. Frankly, if I'm the Saints or anybody that goes up against the Cowboys, whenever possible, I'm going to try to run at Micah Parsons. The common fictional statement to make is, wherever Micah Parsons is, you try to go away from him. Micah's too fast and too good an athlete, and sifts through traffic too well. That ain't going to work. When you do right now, the way Kubiak's zone blocking system works, if you do run away from him, you don't run completely on the opposite side of him. You do a trap with a backside cut, or whatever blocking terminology you want to use nowadays to not draw a flag. But more often than not, I'm going to want to run right at Micah Parsons, to nullify that speed, to nullify that support, and to kind of wear on him, put a body on him, to use the boxing term, go to the body, go to the body, go to the body, and the legs will lose their speed later on in the rounds. That's the kind of philosophy you have to have against Micah Parsons. And if I'm going to do that, and DeMarcus is in, I'd rather have DeMarcus in pursuit than Micah in pursuit, and I would still cut DeMarcus. But yeah, I mean, I think all three of those guys, Taysom, Alvin, and Jamal Williams, are going to play big roles. Not only as runners, but in Taysom and Kamara's case, as receivers, as check down, as emergency valve, and look to see a lot more screens too. Because nothing nullifies a pass rush like cleverly designed screens, not just to your running backs, but don't be surprised to see it to Taysom Hill, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave. Get the ball to those athletes as quickly as you can. Get them in space, and let their legs and open field abilities pick up the yardage for you.
Bob, before we continue on our thoughts here in week 2, we just talked about running backs. I want to test your memory. It's something that we don't get to do a whole lot, but this is going to be a new segment we bring back this year because Bob, as he does every year, does historical pieces on the matchups and the histories between the Saints and every opponent that they play. So we're going to test Bob's memory on running backs going back to the New Orleans Saints 2006 matchup in Dallas. It was a December matchup. 2 running backs in that game went for over 100 yards rushing. Can you name both running backs?
I'm gonna get the easy one. I think is Deuce McAllister.
That is correct. Deuce did it 21 times for 111 yards.
And the other one, Reggie Bush was playing for the Saints, and the Saints did have a couple games that year where Reggie broke a couple long runs, and Deuce had his usual around 100 yards. But I'm going to go Marion Barber for the Dallas Cowboys with the other 100 yards.
Marion Barber was on the team. He had 2 carries for -1 yards in that game. It was Julius Jones.
Oh.
For the Cowboys, who had 10 carries for 116 yards, including a 77-yard scamper against the Saints.
And I knew that was a long run in that game. I was picturing the long hair of Marion Barber flowing down the field. Obviously, I was, maybe he was flowing in reverse.
That might have been it. That might have been it. And to your credit, you brought up Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush had 6 catches for 125 yards in that game. He led all Saints receivers. Terry Glenn for the Cowboys led all receivers. He had 150 yards.
Who's she?
Receiving. Oh, my goodness. And finally, Bob, last question when it comes to this game. There was one player in this game who recorded a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. Can you name the player who recorded a receiving and a rushing touchdown in this game?
You're killing me, man.
This player also had 2 receiving touchdowns in this game, 1 rushing and 2 receiving.
Devery Henderson.
No, sir. No, sir. It was Mike Carney had a 3-touchdown game against the Cowboys in Dallas. That's a great one, isn't it?
I'm obviously off of my game, but rarely am I this far off. Wow, I am ashamed of myself.
Fullbacks are people too, Bob.
That they are.
People too. And last fun fact about this game, even though he did not record a catch in this game, that game was the 100th game for Joe Horn in a Saints uniform.
And he did not record a catch.
Did not record a catch.
Wow. What a weird game. And I remember watching that too. What a weird game.
To go back on it is a very weird one. So there you go. There's some of your Saints history. You want last fun fact, because you guys who are longtime watchers know I'm Bob as well, because you see his background. Big time memorabilia people. I have the game ball that was awarded to Joe Horn for that game as his 100th game as a Saint. He didn't record a catch. That's probably why I have it and he doesn't. But it's back at my parents, but I do have the game ball from that game. Yeah, Drew Brees threw for 384 yards and 5 touchdowns in that game.
And not a catch to Joe Horn. Jeez.
Not a catch to Joe Horn. No. Obscure guys that caught passes in that game: John Owens, Terrence Cooper, Billy Miller, Mark Campbell, Jamal Jones all caught a pass from Drew in that game. And then Mike Carney had 5 catches for 40 yards in that game. That's a good one. That is a good one.
That's also a fantasy football player's nightmare, unless you had Drew Brees.
Yes. And well, I mean, if you're playing PPR and you have Reggie Bush in that game, he has 37 rushing yards, 125 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Like, that's pretty good. But and then even Deuce had 111 rushing yards, no scores though. So if you're a Deuce McAllister owner, you're punching air because you're like, well, Deuce could have 3 touchdowns, but instead Mike Carney has 3 touchdowns. Right. So all you fantasy football players back in 06 that had Deuce McAllister, sorry to bring up that one. Hopefully it didn't lose you like a playoff game or something. You know what, Bob, before we go into the last segment here, we have Bob's historic segment. We'll also have my segment when it comes to my favorite bets of the week when it comes to the Saints and the Dallas Cowboys. And I will pull it up to give you guys the most updated odds for this game. But I'll tell you one off the top of my head that I liked a lot. And that was Taysom Hill to record a touchdown. I thought he had some good looks last week. Obviously, he had the one pass in the back of the end zone that was broken up. That was actually an absolute dime from Derek Carr. So Taysom Hill anytime touchdown score is plus 210. I just like Taysom to get in the end zone in this game. He's a guy that does everything right. Alvin Kamara even commented on it in his post-game presser after defeating the Carolina Panthers. When there was a question asked about his usage, and now with Kubiak, Kamara is the one who brought up that people have stated that Taysom steals his touchdowns because he'll do all the work all the way through, and then Taysom will come in and punch it at the end. That was kind of his answer when asked about getting the ball 3 times in a row at the goal line to eventually get his touchdown. But I like Taysom Hill getting in the end zone at plus 210. If you want another one that's about the same odds, Chris Olave is plus 220 to get in the end zone. I think Chris is due for a big game after being relatively quiet last week. Those are my 2 favorites right out the gate for this game. I know some of you guys don't like the touchdown score bets because for whatever reason, it's harder to sit there and watch a game and have something like that happen in a parlay than it is for someone to surpass a certain amount of yards. Derek Carr's over-under for passing yards is at 221.5, and that is minus 114 if you take the over. He hit 200 right on the money in week 1 in a game where he did not have to throw the ball a whole lot. I do see this being a closer game. I would look at that one very closely. Dak Prescott's over-unders at 256.5. That one's a little tougher. But again, with this being a tight game, I would lean more towards both those guys going over their props. And the last one I'll give you guys is, and I didn't hit it last week, but for whatever reason, I've liked this back-to-back weeks. Alvin Kamara's over-under receiving yards is 29.5. He barely missed it last week. He had 27 receiving yards. Bob talked about ways to slow up the pass rush, and a very good pass rush of the Dallas Cowboys. One way to do that is using the screen effectively. I think Kamara is going to get his opportunities. I like Kamara for over 29.5, and that's at 114. So those are my plays of the week. Check out my Twitter. I'll make sure to post some of those on there as well. probably Saturday night, especially because a lot of these things change, and we'll definitely see more when it comes to the injury report. Bob, last few minutes, we will give you guys an in-depth pregame show, as you know, and we'll talk a little bit about where you can find that. But Bob, we talked about Dallas. I don't want to say ad nauseum, but we talked about Dallas a lot today. I want to end talking about the Saints, and I want to end talking specifically about a guy who I mentioned who's over-under for pass yards, I think is actually probably a good bet this week, and that's Derek Carr, who was very efficient in week 1, didn't have to do a whole lot, but even when he did, he threw a really good ball in week 1. Going into week 2, you're playing a defense that, again, has a stellar pass rush, has a guy in Diggs as a number 1 corner that is a known ball hawk. You might target him a lot, but the one time you slip up, he's going to make you pay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like this matchup for Derek Carr, and what can we learn about where Derek Carr is in the Kubiak offense against a defense like this?
I think we're going to learn a lot about where Derek Carr is, in his comfort level with Kubiak's offense, and Kubiak with Carr too, by the way. An underrated coaching player aspect. But I like the matchup for Derek Carr. I like the throwing matchup for Derek Carr. Obviously, protection, especially with Fuaga, being banged up, protection is a big concern. But if the Saints can provide Derek Carr with protection, I love the matchup that the Saints receivers have against the Cowboys secondary. I respect that Diggs is a playmaker at cornerback, but he's also going to give up some throws. And I completely agree that we will see Chris Olave far more involved, this coming week as a receiver than we saw against the Panthers. We will see Alvin Kamara far more involved as a receiver, against a Dallas linebacking core that isn't very athletic. Damone Clark, is a potential young star on the outside, on the weak side. But he's more of an upfield guy. He's more of your pass rusher. Eric Kendricks, great veteran player, has lost a step. Nick Vigil, same way. So, Kamara is going to have a big athletic advantage. We already talked about the screens to him, that we expect to see. But there were a couple wheel routes that I noticed out of the backfield against Carolina where, Kamara was there and available. Carr just went down the field. So the routes look to be there. The receiving usage looks like it'll be there, so we think that it'll come. And Rashid Shaheed, if Diggs is going to be on Chris Olave, then who's going to cover Rashid Shaheed? Is it Kalen Carson? Andrew Booth, Jordan Lewis, a combination of the three? None of them can match Rashid's speed. Again, if you keep Carr upright, you better believe he's going to take a few shots to Shaheed. Even if you're a Derek Carr hater, you got to acknowledge that Carr throws a pretty decent deep ball, especially when he has an opportunity to step into it. We think A.T. Perry is going to be back. Carr and Kubiak, for that matter, masterfully used all 3 tight ends, if you count Taysom Hill as a tight end. So we can expect that usage again. Again, because the Cowboys are limited at linebacker. Their safeties are big physical guys, but not necessarily coverage guys. So I think the routes are going to be there for Derek Carr to find. You just got to keep him upright, and he has got to be just as decisive, in his progressions and accurate with his throws that he was last week.
Well, Bob, let's close out the show with our favorite game, Dot or Drop. I think it's a good one. We have some new segments. We're ending with a game. We have good news. What are we? Like, what is this? Like, what's going on? What was the meme there? It was like the meme of the year last year. It was like, who would have thought? Not me. We got some good things going on, Bob. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? All right, so I'm going to start this one out very simple. At least in my mind. Very simple answer for you. Easy one. Don't have to stress too much about this one. Chris Olave will have more than 40 yards receiving against the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh God, that's a dot. Yeah, I think Chris Olave stands a good chance to go for 100. I respect Diggs as a playmaker, but he's going to give up some balls. And he's the only real standout in that Cowboys secondary. So I think Olave and Shaheed could both have some big days. You talk about Derek Carr's over and under being 220 passing. I think Derek could go for 300. And not just garbage time points or come from behind, and a come from behind effort. I think that Derek could legitimately go for 300 yards in a close ball game here. I'm going to go, Chris Olave way over 40 yards receiving. My dot or drop. I'll go on the other side of the ball. Dot or drop. The Saints will have 3 interceptions of Dak Prescott on Sunday.
Drop. And a lot of that's because I cannot stress enough that I really like Dak Prescott. I really do. I might not like Dak Prescott enough as a guy to pay $200-something million to, but I really like Dak Prescott. And I think if the question was posed to me, would I rather have Dak or Derek Carr, that it'd be a really tough answer. And if we're going off just last year, I think I'd lean the way of Dak Prescott. Actually, I know I'd lean the way of Dak Prescott if we're just going off last year, because Dak had a case for MVP for parts of the season. That's how good Dak is. And again, when he's put in positions to be the Dak Prescott that the Cowboys envision leading a team to a Super Bowl, when they put him in positions to really succeed, he is a top 5 quarterback in football. But the biggest issue with that has been he hasn't been in those positions consistently. He's been in those positions for like 6-week stretches, maybe 8-week stretches, and then you're like, what just happened? And that's the biggest thing for Dallas. But no, the Saints aren't going to pick him off 3 times. The Saints did a great job winning the turnover battle last week. I think this one's going to be a lot more difficult. I think they'd be lucky to have more than one takeaway in this game, whether it be fumble, whether it be interception, whether it be muffed punt, whatever it may be. I think they'd be lucky to get more than one. So I'm going to drop it. Dot or drop. Demario Davis, I guess sticking on the same theme, Demario Davis records a sack and or a forced fumble.
I'll go dot. I'm not a Dak Prescott hater. Like you, I don't have the love for him you do, but I do like him. Frankly, if you were asking me to pick, between Dak Prescott and Derek Carr for my quarterback, I'd probably, no disrespect to Derek, but I'd probably go Dak. But Demario Davis is the man, remains the man. He was in on a lot of plays last week, just missed. If you want to go back for what's and giggles, go back and watch that Carolina game. Demario came this close to like 2 or 3 other like really big plays. So he even at 35, this Saints defense revolves around him. He's a playmaker. We know that he can bring pressure. We know that he can force mistakes. I'm going to dot that. He will, especially since you gave me an and or, he will get either a sack or a turnover, be it interception or forced fumble. He's going to get at least one of those, probably more than one.
Yeah, I gave you a good one there. A little bit of a not escape, but I gave you some options there.
I'll go on. I'll go on the offensive side then. Alvin Kamara against the Cowboys. Alvin Kamara won't have 100 yards rushing, but will flirt with 100 yards receiving.
Ooh. I'm going to drop it because not any disrespect to Alvin Kamara, and not that I don't like the matchup for him as a receiver, but I do think we see that balanced Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Taysom Hill type of attack, which leads me to think you're going to see some Alvin Kamara performances this year that are going to be like 100 to 120 scrimmage yards.
Yeah.
And it's going to be pretty even. I like Kamara to run for between 50 and 60 yards and come up with 30 to 40 receiving yards in the game. Get close to that 100, but not flirt with 100 receiving yards. That's a lot more difficult than I think people realize for a back to have. Now, Kamara's made it look really easy over the years. I'd have to go back and see how many games he has 100 receiving yards. I know, obviously, last week, 50 games of at least 100 scrimmage yards for Alvin. But no, I see it being very similar to last week. I think he ran for like 80 yards last week. I might see a little dip a little bit there and have the receiving numbers come up a little bit. But I don't see the days of I don't see the days of Kamara getting 20 to 25 touches as consistently as we used to see. And I think that's because the Saints are uber talented at that running back / whatever Taysom is position. And then you throw, whenever it happens, if it happens, you throw Kendre Miller in that mix, and that's going to be another wrinkle to that, right? So this week and moving forward, I just don't see it happening. My last dot or drop to you. Dot or drop. The New Orleans Saints defense holds Dallas under 20 points.
Under 20?
20 or under.
The 20 to 22 range feels doable. And I love the Saints defense. I think Dallas is just too explosive to hold under 20. Now you left me that layup, about 20 or under. I could see them doing 20 to 22 points, but I'm still going to drop it. I think Dallas scores somewhere in the mid 20s. And again, I'm not going to give away who I believe is going to win. But I do believe very strongly that this is going to be a close, tight game. And if it is, it's not going to be the type of game that Dennis Allen wants. Where it's 20 to 17. It's going to be where both teams are in the mid 20s to low 30s. That the 24 to 31 range. Is where I could frankly see both teams coming in this game.
All right, hit me with the last one of the night.
All right, my daughter drop. Juwan Johnson will see the end zone again for the New Orleans Saints this week.
I'm going to drop it because of what I said earlier with Taysom. I like Taysom getting the end zone. I'm not going to double dip on my tight ends, even though the Saints did it last week. Juwan has an interesting over-under when it comes to receptions. He's at 2.5. And I don't know if I like that or not. I don't know if I like the over for that yet. Just because he was very limited coming back.
Right.
And he's going to be a little bit more situational. Don't know if I love that. Going to the points, though, and to piggyback and I guess extend my segment a little bit here. The Saints over-under points is 19.5, which I think is extremely disrespectful to a team that just put up 47 points. And don't take offense to that, Cowboys fans. I'd be saying this. I would say the same thing for you guys. I just don't know what your over-under is. Like, Dallas put up, 30, 33-34, somewhere in there last week against Cleveland. I'm gonna go ahead and look because I'm just curious.
Yeah,
But
33-17.
I think it would be equally disrespectful if Dallas' over under was like 19 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of curious what their over under is now. Excuse me while I buy time and find the answer to my own question.
Insert ad here.
Insert ad here. Okay, so Dallas's over under is 26 and a half. But the Saints total points, they moved it up since yesterday. It's now 20 and a half.
Okay.
A little bit better. Still think it's a little disrespectful to a team that just put up 47 points. But to your point, Bob, Vegas kind of sees it the same way that you do. And it being in that mid 20s to low 30 type of range type of ball game. I'm with you there as well. To get your back to your daughter drop, I will drop Juwan getting in the end zone back-to-back weeks. When he gets back to full health, I might think a little bit different, but he is slowly being worked back into this, especially missing as much time as he did in the offseason. Well, with that, Bob, we're done with another episode of the Bayou Blitz, but I know you have some more news. We're just letting Bob be you're just Ron Burgundy today. Right? You're just sitting at the desk. You're going to read the teleprompter the best that you can.
I am kind of a big deal.
There you go. Perfect.
We are kind of a big deal.
Whoa! I need someone to clip that.
Now, Bayou Blitzers unite.
No, I need somebody to clip that. So at some point, I can slide that in my back pocket and go, Bob, you said we are a big deal. I don't get a lot of compliments like that from Bob. It's usually Bob's a big deal or Brendan's a big deal. We both have big heads. We both have balloon heads. It's fine. But very rarely do the balloon heads kind of collide and we just become one giant balloon head. That just happened. That was awesome.
Right. It did. I can't wait for the week where and I'm going to blame it on my teleprompter already. I can't wait till the week my teleprompter says, go F yourself, Pittsburgh.
Well, I mean, you say that without a teleprompter, just maybe not on live TV or live streams or anything like that.
But yeah, I mean, listen, we've teased it for you guys for months now. From here on out, your Bayou Blitz will still be available live. Our pregame shows are always going to be live. But we want more of you to listen to, watch, tune in after the fact, through Spotify or YouTube or any other ways, that you catch your favorite podcasts. We've talked about wanting to do something special for the members of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group. So from here on out, we are going to attach the live link to the shows where you can join us, comment, ask questions live to only the Bayou members of the Bayou Blitz group and the Facebook groups affiliated with the Bayou Blitz. So that's Bayou Blitz, Who Dat Domination, Smoking Hot New Orleans Saints Social Club, my favorite name, by the way, and Under the Dome. Yeah, it is a mouthful. I've said a lot of mouthfuls tonight, and I've not cursed over it one time, not out loud anyway. So yeah, like I said, it's still possible to catch us live on Wednesday or when we decide to flex our muscle and move Wednesdays to Thursdays. But to join us live, you have to be a member of the Bayou Blitz, Who Dat Domination, Smoking Hot New Orleans Saints Social Club, or Under the Dome. That doesn't mean if you're not a member of those groups, you could still catch us. You catch us on YouTube, Saints News Network. Brendan and I will attach the links to the show the following day, so you can listen to, watch, or whatever you want to do to us, after the fact as well.
And like Bob said, everything will be available on your favorite platform to find your podcast, but we want to make it a little bit more exclusive, especially for the guys that come in every week. You're looking at DJ, Sonny, John, just to name a few that have been in the chat recently. Want you guys to be able to interact with us still every week. And while we keep it limited, it means that we're able to see your comments a lot faster. There's not as much jumbled stuff in there. And we do get to have that one-on-one interaction with you guys that makes the show special. Our post-game shows are still going to be exclusively just on your podcasting network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. But we are excited to bring that to you guys. So that'll start what? We're going to start Sunday or start next Wednesday?
Well, I mean, I guess you could technically say Sunday since we do that with our post-game shows anyway. But yeah, I mean, the weekly links or the links to our weekly shows, we're only going to attach the live links to the Bayou Blitz and those the Facebook groups affiliated with the Bayou Blitz.
So there you go. Well, guys, we certainly appreciate it. Bob's been busy at work writing articles. Some of you are crazy and still don't follow Bob, his work outside of here. So, Bob, for those people, where can they find you, your articles, and your thoughts outside of the Bayou Blitz podcast?
Well, first, we mentioned the Bayou Blitz Facebook group and those affiliated. So if you aren't a member, jump onto Facebook and seek it out. There isn't any membership fees or anything like that unless y'all feel like donating to this poor fella. We'll call it my early senior citizens home fund. But with that in mind, you can follow also myself and all my work through the Saints News Network, Bob Rose on Facebook, or at Bobby R2613 on X Twitter.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. That is on Twitter or X Twitter, whatever we call it now. That is on Instagram and just about anywhere else. We have some hopefully more good news to share with you guys in the coming days, maybe even the coming weeks. Not some good news, as I was seeing out of the corner of my eye. Tua Tagovailoa takes a hit to the head.
Oh, jeez.
And is down, and the medical staff is on the field. And Bob had the same reaction I did because we've kind of known for a while with Tua. One more hit, and that might be it. He collided with DeMar Hamlin going inside the 5-yard line towards the end zone. Dolphins down. Tua's thrown 3 picks today, but never want to see that happen to anyone. But anyway, to end on a good note, we're so excited to continue to share some good news with you guys. We have more good news kind of working in the back. I know that, like Bob said, some of that stuff you guys have been waiting on for months. We've been teasing it for a while. You're sitting there, you're going, are these guys ever going to deliver? We're here, we're delivering, and hopefully we have some more to tell you guys about next time. So if you want to catch our pregame show, we will be live at 11:30 Eastern time on Sunday. That's going to be 10:30 Central. For you guys down there in the Bayou, we hope you guys are healthy and well, and everything is going all right after the storm. So until Sunday at 10:30 Central time, that's Bob Rose. I'm Brendan Boylan. We thank you so much for tuning in to the Bayou Blitz podcast. We'll see you here just in a few days. Until then, find the peace, spread love, practice positivity, and who dat?